Avoidance and the one-year relationship wall is what we will discuss today in this video. As you know, I'm the avoidant therapist. I used to be dismissive avoidant, and I help people to develop secure attachment style, to also understand avoidant dynamic. And what you can notice with avoidant people is that after a year of relationship, the dynamic of the relationship changes and their behavior changes. So perhaps right now you're dating someone and it's been a year and a half, and it feels like from one day to another, they are different. They showed signs of affection, interest, wanted to commit, but somehow after this 1 year mark, something happens. This is what we will discuss in this video, not only for you to understand their psychology, but also to understand what you should be doing if you're in that case, whether you should move on, whether you should fight for them, and the different sort of actions you can implement in your life, things that you can control. Remember this concept of love and independence. When you're avoidant, you always in the back of your mind, look at where's the exit. Because I need my independence. I need to be able to make my own choice, my own decision. And so very often, the honeymoon phase is very easy, and you have an amazing relationship with an avoidant at the honeymoon phase. Because in a way, it feels like they are secure, right? You connect emotionally, they invest in the relationship. But when the relationship develops, they start getting triggered because their sense of independence is threatened by the relationship. And so as you develop a relationship, any relationship, you gradually learn to be emotionally available, to be vulnerable, to open up. And this vulnerability is scary for avoidant. For many years, and still to this date sometimes, I struggle with vulnerability. Because vulnerability, is a way for me, if I were to listen to my avoidant side, is a sign of weakness. And I don't want to be weak. I want to show to the world, to my partner, that I'm strong, right? And for me, strength is being able to rely on myself. Also, mechanically, 1 year mark means higher expectations in the relationship. This is where usually we discuss about moving in together, meeting the family, and so on and so forth. And so as the relationship progresses, their fear of commitment is getting triggered. And this fear is usually followed by strong withdrawal. And I'll explain what's going on in a second. One thing I would highly recommend you to analyze is whether they've had these patterns in the past. If you're dating someone who only had short-term relationships, there's a pattern here. And it's not so much about you. Maybe that's not the case, but if there's a pattern of short-term relationship, stop blaming yourself for what happened and start understanding that actually, maybe it's because of their avoidance. And if you are struggling to make sense of this situation, I also put together an assessment for people who date avoidant to assess whether they should move on, whether they should fight, and the difference depending on 4 categories, 4 outcomes depending on the assessment of things you need to implement and need to do. And so for an avoidant, closeness is a bad word. Because closeness for them is like, hold on, if I'm close to you, I'm losing my independence. If we are deeply involved, again, I'm going to lose myself in the relationship. And the thing is, if you have an anxious attachment style, the problem that you might have is that you're losing yourself in this relationship. And that's why, for instance, if you broke up recently with your partner, you have a hard time moving forward because you've lost yourself in this relationship. For avoidant, they don't take that risk, which prevents them from creating deep emotional connection, which prevents them from having meaningful relationships, but at least they're not taking any risk. And so emotional intimacy, I can't deal with that. And that's why you might hear, I can't give you what you need. That doesn't mean you have unrealistic needs. That means they don't have the tools, they don't have the understanding to be emotionally mature. And that's why sometimes, out of nowhere, they're off. And so they would lose interest in the relationship because they feel like, well, now that was easy, right? The first 6 months, they were easy. We would just do things going with the flow, not planning anything in the future. That everything will be smooth. But then as the relationship progresses, I feel you're asking me too much things that I can't give you. Also, because of that, when you're dating an avoidant, you feel the need to be reassured. Tell me what you want to do in 6 months, about the holiday planning, about your families, about the friends. Give me some clarity because you're shying away from those conversations. And the more you shy away from those conversations, the more insecure I feel, right? And you end up in this anxious avoidant trap that I describe in many of my videos. And that's why you see them distancing themselves, usually around this 1 year mark. And around this 1 year mark, you have this, they start to sabotage the relationship. They will pick fights on small things. What they would do, not necessarily mention, but they would do, I used to do that all the time, they will focus on partner's flow. So I remember I had a girlfriend who was super social when I was in my 20s. And I was attracted by that, right? And I love that she was the party goer and organizing stuff, etc. But after a year, I was like, I hate that. And I picked that person for the same reason that I was like making myself excuses for breaking up with her. I was not fully aware of my attachment at that time. I was in my 20s, so didn't feel any form of pressure in terms of committing. I just wanted to go with the flow. But it's interesting because sometimes what attracts you is the reason you break up with someone. So when you're an avoidant, you will find excuses, and I will find like, oh yeah, I don't want to hang out with our friends. But at the beginning, I was attracted by that, and I got along with her friends. But it felt like too much. Right, so at the beginning, it's easy to go on board and go with the flow. And at some stage, because things progress, because it's not anymore she's a party goer and we do things and we are not just more than social animals, and party animals, sorry, and that we, I don't know, go on weekends and do things and meet our families, etc. This is where, oh, hold on, it's not really what I signed up for. And that's why they would withdraw physically, emotionally. They will become workaholic from one day to another. A lot of avoidants, they love golfing because you can be for several hours or all day with your mates, not being with your partner, for instance. And this is also where you ask yourself as an avoidant, if I feel this way, maybe it's because I don't love them. Right? Because if I were to love this person, I wouldn't focus on her flaws. And that's why you have this urge to escape the relationship. So when you're not aware about attachment and you have an avoidant attachment style, there's this idea of like, if I feel this way, it's because I'm not in love with this person. Whereas like if you think about it for a second, if you're this way, it's because you're scared of commitment. If you're this way, it's because the relationship seems difficult. Not the partner, the relationship seems difficult. And the problem is, this is very important. The problem is, if you're an avoidant, you don't communicate on this. You will keep those thoughts to yourself. And that's the problem when you're dealing with an avoidant, because they are never solution-oriented. They will feel a certain way. They will decide to dismiss those feelings, to distract, work, hobby, stuff like that, and never being transparent. So that's why a lot of people say, oh, we have communication problem. The communication problem is because that person is not speaking up. It's not because you said anything wrong or because you asked to discuss about things, right? Because you have every right. If you have emotional needs and physical needs and things that you need to discuss, there's nothing wrong discussing those things with your partner. So avoidant, they have this deep fear of commitment. That doesn't mean that they can't love, but commitment and love are clashing. So again, very quickly, they feel trapped. When you are in a long-term relationship, you lose freedom, right? I can't make all my decisions. if we live together, we'll have to compromise. And so that becomes very, very difficult for an avoidant if they're not aware about their attachment style. And so you have this fight or flight response sometimes of run. You have to run because you're going to lose your autonomy, right? And what you are as a person is someone self-reliant. So obviously, look at attachment style as a spectrum. So you have extreme people who are avoidant and who would stay avoidant for the rest of their life. I don't think I was in the extreme. I was somehow in the middle. And so it's important to assess also whether your partner is on the extreme end. The problem, if they're on the extreme end, they would have such strong coping mechanism, then they would, sort of put themselves away from any relationship, block everything. And regardless of the effort, regardless of what you're doing, you're never going to break that shell. So this idea of forever, this idea of commitment, okay, I need to run away. Again, it's really like knee-jerk effect of like, whoa, I can't deal with that. And that's where you might hear people telling you, I can't do this. I love you, but I can't do this. And when you think about it, like, it doesn't make sense. If you love me, you fight, which is true, right? Remember this. If someone tells you, I love you, but I can't stay with you, that's not a call for you to repair, to fix them. That's a sign that this person is choosing, in a way, even though there's a lot of unconscious driver, they're choosing not to fight. And if you think about what should be the right partner, is a partner who fights for you. So if you love me, prove it to me. Prove it to yourself and stop lying to yourself saying you love me. Because you're lying to yourself, you're lying to myself by saying this. So that's very important if you're having a hard time right now. And again, it's important to assess where you are. Because like you have each type of avoidance, like every avoidance is a style in itself. So again, have a look in the description if you want to assess your specific relationship. So from your point of view, if you are dating someone avoidant, you have this hot and cold. One day they are affectionate, next day they are distant. They ask for space and you don't understand what you've done. So you assume I must have said something, I must have done something. And those mixed signals create that anxiety because you never know what you should be doing, right? You're walking on eggshells. Anytime you call them, you don't know whether they will react positively, negatively. And it's very hard when you're dating someone. The predictability is very important in a relationship. It's, in a way, what comes before trust, right? If I can't predict how you will react, I'm not going to be able to trust you. And if I can't trust you, I can't be in a relationship with you, right? The problem is that when you have an anxious attachment style, you default to, I must have done something wrong. That's why I think those videos, not because I'm making them, and are valuable. Any type of videos on attachment when you're dating an avoidant are valuable because it makes sense of the reality and helps you to detach yourself from that part of responsibility. Rather than sort of blaming yourself from this, find that subtlety, find the balance. Also, what happens is like avoidants, they don't understand that they're pushing their partner away. When I was pushing my partners away, I was just like, they are too emotional, they are too needy. Right? We were fine before. She wasn't asking those things. Right now, it feels like we need to compromise, we need to discuss about the future. Right? And that was too much for me. The problem is that when you have this roller coaster effect, that's a sign that at some stage, if nothing is done and addressed, the relationship will die. Either by the avoidant pulling the plug or the anxious person pulling the plug, saying like, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be living in a relationship where I have to second guess. I have to, I feel I'm walking on eggshells, etc., etc. So sometimes anxious people, they leave the relationship. And I have people who have avoidant attachment style calling me saying like, I messed up. Because now I discover why I did those things. And my partner didn't accept. And she or he left. So understand that, again, the breakup can be beneficial in the sense of like recognizing what happened. So depending on where you are, anxious or avoidant, okay, what's my part of unconscious driver? What can I do about that? So what can they do about that? From the avoidant point of view, they need to recognize their fear, the response, the mechanism. Why am I scared of commitment? Why is it so hard when my partner is asking me to open up? He's making emotional bids. It's about challenging the beliefs. Closeness equals loss. Intimacy equals weakness. All those things that you need to deconstruct. Took me a few months to deconstruct that. And sometimes I need to remind myself. Now, the protocol that I design, it's not a question of months, it's in a few weeks, you can really work at developing this secure attachment style. Now, if you're dating someone avoidant and you want to repair the relationship, yes, by developing a secure attachment style, by being the role model, you will maximize your chances of reconciliation. That's a fact. I wrote an entire book on how to do it. But they also need to do the work. And so I often say to my clients, when we start the secure-based program, is we'll do our best. You will be proud of the work that you will be doing. You will have this secure attachment style at the end of this process. But understand that I cannot control how your partner will respond. We're just showing him or her the way. We're just showing them an alternative, but it's up to them to overcome their limited beliefs around relationships. And that's very important, and that's something you need to remember. You can only control the things you can control. And yes, it's about maximizing the chances, but there's always an element, always something that depends on them. Most of the time, people get back together. But in some cases, they don't, because the person, their ex, is so stubborn, not in terms of their decision, but in terms of how they see things. They have a fixed mindset. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing my clients can do. And we have to acknowledge this. And when this happens, this is your closure. Because you don't want to be with someone who has this fixed mindset in terms of, okay, if there's a problem, let's work it out. Relationships are hard. Long-term relationships is, you need to expect from your partner to be in that, okay, let's repair, let's discuss. So sometimes, yes, it's just a question of changing the dynamic, understanding that they're avoidant, adapting your communication, being secure, and that solves everything. Sometimes it's not enough. And the last part has to be done by them. And you shouldn't be their therapist. You shouldn't be trying to fix them. You shouldn't be over-apologetic because they had a difficult childhood or traumas. That's not your role, right? So it's very important to consider that. If you have any question on this, let me know. If you like this video, don't forget to click on like and subscribe as well. That does help me massively. And I'll see you next time. Take care.